Welcome to PTSD Self-Healing Show, a journey to self-discovery. I'm your host, Panta Kalhor. Episode 10, Reconnecting to Release Traumatic Stress with Cheryl Martin, Resiliency Coach and Post-Traumatic Growth Expert. Please subscribe to Panta Kalhor Transition channel and pre-order my book, Naturally Conceived, through Amazon. Thank you for watching. Welcome to PTSD Self-Healing Show. I'm your host, Panta Kalhor. Mothers are protectors. They do whatever for their kids to make them safe and secure. Especially when they are in abuse relationship, it's better to leave that relationship and find their way. Here I have Cheryl. She's a resiliency coach and post-traumatic growth expert, and she has a very interesting story to tell you. Welcome to our show, Cheryl. I'm so happy to have you here.
Oh, thank you so much for inviting me. I'm glad to be here too.
Yes, we finally made it.
Finally.
Yes.
I think we're all having challenges with internet lately.
Yes.
We're all at home.
So tell me about yourself. What is your story and what do you do right now?
So my story and the work that I do right now are very much entwined. I am a resiliency coach. I work with mainly women who have either left abusive relationships or have experienced trauma in their lives. I think we've all experienced trauma at some level, but I work with those people who it kind of stays with them and they haven't been able to process it, and they're still having some effects of that trauma showing up in their life, whether it's triggers, whether it's other symptoms of post-traumatic stress, or whether it's just not being able to really create the life that they want. How that came out for me was I was one of those women who was in an abusive relationship. I had a lot of challenges just to live my life and to be myself. And so I found this work and the coaching work that I do as a client. Yeah.
So what was your story? What happened to you?
Well, I was in a relationship. I was married, and I got married. I wouldn't say I got married young, but I was in the relationship since I was young, and over time, the relationship developed to be abusive, and what that looks like is not always clear to people that they're in an abusive relationship. It was in a relationship where I was not really allowed to be myself. I wasn't able to speak my mind or have opinions that were different from his. And that slowly escalated to, restrictions on, finances, where I could go, the people I could talk to, and just lots of criticism. Eventually it got physical. And in 2009, my daughter was now almost 3. And an incident happened where it got physical. Not the first time, but this time, what was different was he brought my daughter into the confrontation and involved her by talking to her and saying mean things about her mom. And so in that moment, I realized that as much as I thought that I could continue putting up with what was happening, because I believed it was right for my daughter to have both of her parents together and all of those things that mothers often believe, I realized that the abuse that was happening to me and the manipulation and control and coercion wasn't going to stop with me. And I think that's something that other mothers or other women in those situations can relate to, especially when our self-esteem and our worthiness becomes smaller and diminished by the actions of that person. I don't think there's a mother out there who doesn't want the best for their kids and isn't doing the best that she can. And in that moment, the best that I could do was to make a decision to leave and give her the chance to, grow up without that in her life.
You are so brave. There are lots of people, lots of women in this world. they put up with this relationships because of their kids. And because they don't have any other choice to just go free and get divorced. Not in all cultures it's accepted.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's, yeah, I mean, kids always need a very safe place to live. So I think when the relationship is abusive and you see it, that it's more challenging for the kids staying in that, under that roof, rather than just go and live with you free. So you just rather to save this situation and, you know, go and live somewhere else. You've been so brave.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a lot of complications, and I recognize that there are differences in cultures. There were challenges for me in the community that I was in, and being a Catholic, I did experience some of the negative responses from the community, from the church, from different people in my life. But I think like my safety and my daughter's safety was most important. And I recognize that there are challenges, especially when it comes to culture.
Yes.
And I do want people to know that there are resources out there other than what I do with social agencies to help, specifically even for some of the cultures. So I hope that if you're experiencing something like this, that you realize that there is help out there, and people who understand the challenges that you're going through.
Where are you living now?
I'm in Vaughan, so north
Uh,
of Toronto.
yeah, very
Yeah,
close to me.
close to you. Oh,
Yeah,
where do you
yeah.
live?
In Richmond Hill.
Richmond. Oh, we're really close. Well,
Yeah,
when
yeah,
this is
very
over,
close.
we can go have a hot drink
Yeah, yeah.
or a cold
Hopefully
drink.
this COVID actually stopped everything. But
It
that's
might be a
great.
cold drink by the time
Yeah.
we get out of here. Yeah.
So, Cheryl, tell me about the triggers when you confront, how you confront them,
Hmm.
and the fears that you had from those abusive relationship. What do you do? Still, do you still have those triggers, or it's over?
Not really, not so much. I think what we can say for PTSD is um, there's always a response in your body, right? It stays with you, and I don't know how much you know about Pavlov's dog. Have you ever heard of that experiment, Pavlov's dog?
No, no.
So Pavlov was a researcher, and he trained his dogs to respond when they heard a bell. And what he did was he'd always ring a bell before he fed the dogs, right? And so as he continued doing this experiment, he learned that if he rang the bell, the dogs would start salivating like they were expecting food, even if there was no food around. So triggers are like that, right?
Yes.
A trigger works the same way. It's unconscious, right? Nobody decides that they want, if they hear a door slam, nobody decides that they want, all the hairs on the back of their neck to stand up and for them to get all tense and your muscles all contracted, like you have to respond to it. It's an unconscious response, and it's even deeper. It's body level responses. So for me, I did a lot of work when I got out of my relationship. I spent the first couple of years doing what traditional therapies. I went to counseling. I did talk therapies. I went to the group sessions for all the women who've been abused. So I formed some good relationships there. And then I started doing coaching. So I met someone who worked with me on the unconscious programs. So the belief systems and the behaviors that we're affected by through our experiences. So some of them can be great and they're awesome and we want to keep those. But if you can imagine being in an abusive relationship, they slowly chip away at your self-worth and your belief, your ability to speak up. And so I developed these things like, nobody wanted to hear what I had to say. I wasn't important. So I worked with a coach on all of those. And after doing that, I decided I wanted to be a coach. So I'm going to fast forward because that's not the end of the story. So I've been coaching now for, I think it's been 11 years since I left the relationship. And I've been coaching for 5, but about 2 years ago, 2 years, maybe it's 3, I started having panic attacks for no reason, right? And I couldn't figure out what the trigger was because I'd done so much work on those belief systems and everything that um, nothing was coming up, but it was just strictly a body response. Like, um, I don't know how many people here have those responses, but like I said before, like shivers up the back of your neck, like really rapidly beating heart, can't breathe, feeling like you're being chased, all of those kind of panic attack things. And we couldn't figure out what the problem was. I actually ended up on a leave from work, a medical leave because of it. Because I don't know how much you know about how that stuff responds, but the trauma response in our body shuts down our thinking brain. So if you can think of fight or flight, when, imagine a bear is chasing you, you don't want your rational mind to be asking you, say, hey, is that tree tall enough for me to escape? Or, should I hide under, like, you don't want to think about those things. So when we're in a survival mode, our thinking brain shuts down. And if you can imagine having panic attacks and going back into that experience, I wasn't able to do work. Like my thinking processes were down. So in that time period when I was off work, I really started exploring to find out, why is this happening? And I came across body work. So somatic experiencing, just other body techniques where we can tap into that survival response and turn it down, and find out what is feeding that system to keep going. So so of course I learned that all for myself. I worked with other practitioners and professionals, and I've now taken that last piece into the work that I do with other women so that they can turn off those responses, because it's those responses that stop us from moving into the place where we can start healing. If you can imagine, it's really impossible to live your life if you don't feel safe. It's
Yes.
impossible to move forward when you don't feel safe.
Yes, safety.
Yeah.
Yeah, actually, I had the same experience, like
Yeah.
real experience of somebody killing me with a knife point. I exactly
Wow.
understand what happened. Like when you see the knife point on somebody's hand and
Mm-hmm.
somebody threaten you to death to
Mm-hmm.
steal your car, then this memory all the time trigger
Yeah,
and remind you that it's going to happen to you again.
it
And the
does.
interesting thing is, whatever I did, I tried a lot of self-helping and a lot of work on myself. But
Mm-hmm.
at the end of the day, I always had nightmare that somebody is going to kill me.
Mm-hmm.
And the interesting point, even if I immigrated to another country to start a new life, again, I always just look back to see if somebody following me. And
Yeah.
then in a very safe city, some people followed me and grabbed my grabbed my suit, wallet and suitcase, everything I had. And then they slap on my face. And I was like, why this happened to me? Because I had these memories with me all the time. All the time I thought that somebody's following me, somebody's going to kill me.
Mm-hmm.
So as you see, if you don't process this trauma, if you hide it in yourself, that's going to happen and happen again.
Absolutely.
Like,
It's
yes,
it's damaging to realize that that's what happened. That's how I mean, if we talk about abusive relationships, that's how people end up in another one, because
exactly.
because
That's
that
that's the point.
programming is
Yes,
still
I
there.
like that. I interviewed a lot of women,
Mm-hmm.
and I see some of them repeated the same pattern all the time, because they sometimes you end the relationship hopefully to have a new relationship, but you didn't work in yourself, you didn't
Exactly.
work on your process, and you didn't process the trauma you already been there. So that's why this trauma again expect, because you
Mhm.
expect it again, repeat,
Yeah.
you know
Yeah.
so that's why people ended up divorcing few times. because it
Yeah, it can
happened.
happen that way too.
Exactly. Maybe so in some examples, maybe it was better to work on a relationship, especially when you have kids. But when you stay in that relationship and you stay there for 15 years, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
15 years, it's too much. Like,
It was too
and
much, I'll tell you.
you try to fix it, but sometimes this is not fixable and you
Yeah.
damage yourself and you damage your kids. It's better you just get out of that relationship and
Mhm.
start a new thing. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think a lot of the times it does come down to your beliefs about your own worth, right? Um, so I think I found in working with other women and just even the women that I talk to, that a lot of the time they leave because of their kids. A lot of times they stay for a while and then they realize things aren't changing and that their kids are, now the kids are recognizing what's going on. And the truth is, when you're in one of those relationships where there's a lot of conflict, you can't hide the conflict from the kids. They might not see you arguing, they might not hear the abuse, but there's an energetic connection. There's an energetic, like, you energetically they can feel it. But also, if you think about how we release hormones, right? If you're in fight or flight because you're constantly feeling like your life is at risk, or maybe not your life, but like that you could get hurt, you could get punished, you're walking on eggshells, you're emitting hormones out into
Yes.
your environment. So you're running really high cortisol and really high adrenaline, and other people around you will pick up on it on a body sense, right? They're not going to recognize, hey, that person's got really high adrenaline and cortisol, but they will recognize it on a chemical level. And if we think of how influential we are to our children, we are teaching them at an unconscious level how to respond to the situation that they're in.
Exactly.
So yeah, it's really important to recognize that that staying has its impact too. And I totally know, as a single mom, I'm still single. I'm not going to say always have been single, but I'm single right now. The challenges of leaving an abusive relationship and being a single mom and maybe not
Of
having the
course.
financial support and all of those things, I get it. It's a different challenge. You might have court that you're dealing with. Sometimes we have mental health or wellness issues that have come out of being in that relationship. It's totally valid. I validate all of those. I have experienced some of them myself and still have some of those challenges. It's a different kind of stress than expecting your life to end.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Kids are very intelligent, even
they
if they
are.
are small. I know because whenever I see in different relationship, parents are fighting together,
Mhm.
kids are crying because they feel that they're losing
Mhm.
their safety, they're
They
not
do.
secure. So if this pattern just repeat and repeat, kids feel very unsafe in this relationship.
Yeah. There's a
Yes.
lot of studies too on the impact of that kind of relationship on a child as they grow up. And even if they're not exposed to the behaviors of abuse, they are still more prone to being in one of those relationships themselves as they grow up. They're more prone to different mental health issues. They're more prone
Exactly.
to struggles in
Drugs and
school, all of
alcohol.
those things, because their body, like I said, their body has now been, I don't like the word programmed, but that's normal to them. Their body's been exposed to it for so long. And it applies for other things too, like war zones. And if we want to talk about, we're not going to dip into that, but like different cultures and different racial experiences, colonialism, all of that, your body becomes programmed with stress and trauma,
Yes.
right? Um, and so I think it's difficult for us to think about those things when you're in the moment, but it's also something to be aware of if that helps you to make a decision and to know that there's help out there for those things.
Yes.
Yeah.
Especially when you live in Toronto, I mean Canada. And you
There is a
mentioned
lot
that there
more
are
help for
lots of
us.
help and support.
Mhm.
So, Cheryl, tell me about your work with your clients. How do you start working with your clients? Do you have a specific program, a specific method to work on?
I do have a general program, but of course, every single one of the people that I work with comes in with different experiences and
Yes.
different um, triggers. And some of them have been doing a lot of work on their own and they need help with specifically around triggers. And some of them come in and this is new to them, the world of unconscious work. Um, so the world of unconscious work starts with always when we're dealing with this kind of um, well, any kind of change is creating a safe space. It's really important when we're dealing with change because change is scary,
Yes.
right? When you do something new, there's always a little bit of fear and excitement mixed in, and sometimes more fear and sometimes more excitement. But change is scary, so creating a safe space is really important. And when I'm looking at trauma, um, relating my story to them and letting them know that I am somebody who's trauma experienced. It's one thing to have all that trauma informed training and to know how to handle it. It's another thing to sit down with a client and say, this is my story. I know what's happening in your body. Like I recognize it. And I know how to work with it. And I think it makes a little bit of a difference there. So creating that safe space, um, usually if the next steps we do is we go through helping your nervous system, teaching you how to get your nervous system to reset itself. And because it's been running in fight or flight for so long, because you have been activated and constantly, like you said, looking over your shoulder and expecting things to happen, even if it doesn't make any sense. I work with you to reset your nervous system and train it to feel more calm, right? So that when the triggers come up, because when we have one of those triggers, like I said before, it's a body response. You don't even have that little tiny second in between to say, is this reasonable? Like, does it make sense that someone is going to come after me, right? Um, for example, right now I'm living in a place where my upstairs neighbors are really noisy. They've got a toddler who likes to run around and jump, and so there are sometimes like sudden noises from him jumping. So I've been able to work with myself and my daughter to help us get that little space between hearing the noise and having a body reaction, right? And so when I can ask myself, it sounds kind of weird, but like, am I at risk? You know, is there a danger to me? Am I safe? If you get that little space, then your body you can turn the reaction off. Yes, the hairs on the back of the neck, the weird pit of the feeling sensation does start, but I can turn it off now because I know, no, it's the kid having fun upstairs, right? There's no danger.
No.
So that's kind of the idea, right?
Yes.
To get you. And once we get to that place and it doesn't take too long, like we work on sessions, it's something you're going to work on for the rest of your life. Turning off those triggers and recognizing when they're there. Then we can start changing, working on, what are the experiences you went through and what did it tell you about yourself? The work that I do is not talk therapy. I don't ask you to repeat your whole story. I just need to know like a little tidbit. What you shared with me today is enough for us to work together, for me to know, okay, she's dealing with definitely some trauma. Um, and then we start looking at the unconscious. We look at the beliefs and the behaviors that happened inside of you because of your experience. Because the experience is never going to be erased. It's always going to be part of your life. As you move forward, it can become part of your story. That's, a strengthening part of your story, a part where you grew out of. So we work with the behaviors and the beliefs that were all wrong, right? They're all wrong. We know how resilient and strong all of us are. You survived. You're sitting here telling people your story. That in itself is resilient. So that's where I work with, and I work with the unconscious mind to do that. And there's some really cool, weird stuff that we do. If you think about hypnosis, that's one of the things that I do. And then
Oh, good.
energetic level work,
Yes.
NLP, if you guys have heard of NLP or
Yes. Yes.
neuro-linguistic programming, which
Yes.
really just means changing the way that you think about yourself and the way that you think about the world. Yeah.
Yes. I like that. Actually, you mentioned about survivor mode, and you said
Mhm.
in survival mode, you cannot think
No.
until you feel safe. This is a very deep thought because I can't touch it.
Mhm.
It's in survival mode. The only thing you really obsess about is with surviving,
Mhm.
eating, or handling your situation just to get you alive, just
Mhm.
stay alive. And by the time you are just thinking about this, you cannot think of other stuff. Your mind is blank.
Yeah.
And then you go to safe mode, and that safe mode, you start thinking about your shelter, how can you protect yourself, and then you go to other levels like
Mhm.
Maslow hierarchy. That's
Yeah, exactly.
so the good thing now about our talk is that if in survival mode you pause a little bit
Mhm.
and then give some time to yourself to think, then you go to higher level, which is
Yeah.
safety.
Yeah.
That's a very interesting point, because at that point, then you think, okay, nothing is happening. I'm okay. I'm here. Look around. There is nothing following me. That's what I did with myself. Like after that, the second accident, some people
Mhm.
robbed my stuff, and then I said, okay, why this happened? After all changes I made in my
Mhm.
life, why this happened again? And then I try to reframe my brain. I
Mhm.
try to just thinking I'm living in a safe place. I'm enjoying my life. There is nothing to worry about. And, you know, after sometimes journaling and analyzing my thoughts, finally, I didn't have any nightmares.
Mhm.
So finally, I could, even those accident that somebody is killing me, even I didn't have those accidents in my mind. It didn't repeat some, and
Mhm.
it got very small and far, like what you do in NLP.
Mhm.
When I was a child, I used to read NLP, the
Did you?
books all the time. It's a very old
It totally is.
science, yeah, but
Yeah.
it really affect my life.
That's
Anthony
good.
Robbins and yeah, Joseph Murphy, and these are the
Yep.
founders of NLP. And it's not that, like, it's not only that, you have to customize your needs. There are lots of techniques out there,
Absolutely.
but everybody's is different, because I talk to my clients about the PTSD, and I
Mhm.
see not all of them like doing some art.
No.
They are not artistic, they prefer to have other distraction,
Yeah.
maybe have some fun. They love to be more socialized,
Mhm.
or do some cooking. People are different, and
Mhm.
so your method for one person is not going to happen, is not going to be effective for another one. So you
Yeah.
have to be creative enough to customize this method with them.
Yeah, totally, totally. The cool part is um, the creative mind. When you're in a creative mode, you know that you're not in fight or flight, that you're not in survival mode if you're being creative. And so when I'm working with a client, and I do this myself too, of course, like I said, I'm trauma experienced. I've been doing this for 11 years since I got free. The creative mind is the part of you that comes back online when you're not in fight or flight. It's more than just the rational mind. The creative mind is the connection between like your brains and your body and your soul. So I do soul work too. Um, I I I I really truly believe that when you're being creative, you're fully aligned and connected with all three parts of who you are:
I
your
like it.
body,
Yes.
your unconscious mind, or your heart and your soul, right? Um, so creativity doesn't have to be drawing; it can be
No,
dancing,
it
it can
can
be
be anything.
singing, it can
Yes,
be.
produces something. Like my own method was creating a book. So I produced a
Mhm.
book. The method helped me to distract from my thoughts.
Yep.
I think journaling, whatever distracts you from your trauma, and just you can have your 100 focus on this with your all senses help you. And I talked with one of the addiction warrior yesterday, and she said people are addicted because they need distraction.
Yep.
You know,
Mm-hmm.
they need to be numb, and they
Yes.
don't want to see the world around them.
Yeah.
That's you can create with your life, with art, with journaling. There are some other ways than just going to having some drinks or get numbed with going high, you know. So if you discover these things in you and try to be more creative and have the inspiration to do this, you know, because you had a baby, you had a child, and you know that you need to protect her with whatever happens to you. So that was a big inspiration.
Yeah.
So you know that you had to work on yourself, uh, and then you can protect your kid as well.
Yeah.
That happened to other interviewees that I talk. They lost their baby, but because they had other babies, they knew that they have to survive, and they knew that they have to protect their kids. So that big inspiration lead them to have their own space, be safe, feel safe, and then not only protect themselves and love their babies, and create a new life for themselves.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you know, and that's okay if that's the motivating part that gets you to make some changes. It's okay, because all of those beliefs that we have about ourselves, and you know, when you're in one of those relationships, you're being told you know, that you're not worth it. You're being told, you know, that you can't do anything right. That stuff goes down into your unconscious. So your unconscious is what rules the way you believe, right?
Yes.
um so I find that it's okay if you start out to help someone else, to do this to protect someone else, because ultimately you
Yes.
are protecting yourself, right?
Yes. And then interesting thing, coaching, some people
Mhm.
help you to coach yourself, because
Totally.
through helping them you discover other ways, and
Yep.
when you get the positive energy from them, you get inspired as well.
Yeah, absolutely. That's funny because I say that all the time. People ask, you know, why do you coach? Like, how do you coach through people through this experience when you've lived it? Like, does it not trigger you? And of course it does, and sometimes. Of course, I hear someone say something that is too close to what I've experienced. Of course, I work with a coach outside. Like, I also still do my own work, journaling and working with other people and all of that. But I always say, like, every time a client comes in, I heal in some way from whatever their experience is. There's always a connection, big, small, something I realize, something I don't realize, that allows me to keep growing and healing as well. And I say, you know, every time I work with someone, I get paid twice. I get paid money, like all of us do, but I get paid in my heart, right? Because I know that
I
I'm
love
not
it.
leaving anyone behind, that I'm doing my best to make sure that, like, women and their kids are not continuing to go through that experience, that there's someone to help them. Because I'll tell you, when I got out of that relationship, and like, I really thought that I was going to have to live the rest of my life, like, my heart racing every time I got a text message from him, right? And with, when you have a kid with the person who was abusing you, like, your relationship continues in some other form,
So yeah,
right?
it's not gonna be it's
So
not gonna
yeah,
be
so I mean, I couldn't not have any contact with him. um so I thought I was gonna have to live the rest of my life like feeling like that. Every time I got a text message or a phone call, it was like, it set off alarms all over my body. It was ridiculous.
It's not only him, for his family
Oh
as
yeah, his
well.
family too, right?
That's the point.
It's
Yeah.
yeah, it doesn't just extend to the one person. So I thought that I was going to have to live with that. And I just want people to know that you don't have to stay like that for the rest of your life. So if it's been 5 years and you're still experiencing that, if it's been, 2 and you're still experiencing that, there's help out there. And you just need to find someone who has different tools than what you've already tried.
I
There's
like that.
lots of stuff that will help. There's tons of
Yeah.
resources and people out there that can help you kind of reclaim more of who you are, right? Get back to
Yes.
being to feeling safe in your body. It's really important that you feel safe in your body.
Yes.
Yeah.
Safety. All right. Do you have your last word, like the recommendation for people who are struggling with PTSD? Is this curable or manageable?
I think it's totally manageable. And I think we all realize that, because there are lots, if you look at the stats and who has PTSD or complex PTSD, because that's a little bit different.
Yes.
I think managing is totally possible. Curing it, I don't know if I want to say the word cure. If you can live the rest of your life, and you can manage it, and you are aware of it, and you can love your life and live an amazing life, I'd say that's that's amazing. Yeah, I've done so much work, and every once in a while I recognize it, and I think it's just an awareness. We have so much more awareness of our own bodies,
Yes.
in the way that we respond to things, and what warnings there are out in the world, right? You pick up on everything. In some ways, it's kind of a blessing to know that you are totally aware of everything that's happening around you, and that your body is paying attention, right?
Yes.
Your body is paying attention. And I thank my body when it gives me those signals. Can we recover? Absolutely. Absolutely. That's why.
Yeah, go ahead.
We're talking about post-traumatic growth, right?
Yes.
The trauma that you've been through, the experiencing that you've been through. I really hate when people say, "Oh, everything happens for a reason." I don't know if everything happens for a reason. I can't really speak to that yet, but I know that there's something to learn from everything that has happened to you.
Yes.
That you can grow from everywhere that you've been through. So if we focus on, how can I grow through this, and how can I grow from this? And once I've grown from this, can I help other people? And it's not for all of us to be the helpers and do what I do.
No.
But even just to be an example for your kids, right?
Yes.
We're such role models for our kids. And when I left, my daughter was almost 3. She's 14 now. I don't think she'd be the kid that she is if I'd never left. She is completely resilient. She uses her voice. She speaks up.
That's good.
She's very in tuned with justice and speaking up for others. And she really is the most resilient kid that I could have hoped for. So, even if I didn't do this work, my legacy and the work that I've done has led her to a place where she can live an amazing life, that I know she's not going to end up in one of those relationships.
I like that. Yes.
And if that's all we do for our kids,
yes,
that's amazing.
That's amazing. All right, Sherry, thank you so much for being here. I really enjoyed talking to you, and
thank you so much.
Seeing another brave woman that fight for her dream. I'm saying because you had this dream in your mind that you're gonna be safer and have a happier life. So I'm really proud of you, and thank you for being a model for others to just have the voice for what they believe in.
Thank you so much. I'm so glad that we found each other, and I'm just looking forward to seeing everything else that you're doing. I think it's amazing the way that you show up for the world in the way that you do. We each do it in our own different ways, and you are just offering this platform for other people to learn from, to grow from, and to recognize amazing people who have fought through challenges in their life and are
Exactly.
doing their best. So
Yes.
thank you for asking
Thank you
me to
so
be one of
much.
those people.
Yes. Thank you so much, Cheryl. Bye.
Thank you.
Please subscribe to Panta Kalhor Transition channel and pre-order my book Naturally Conceived through Amazon. Thank you for watching.